Believe it or not, the very first economists, the people who basically wrote the rulebook for capitalism, thought its end was inevitable. Yeah, they actually predicted that all economic growth would one day just stop. Today, we're going to dive into how on earth they reached that incredible conclusion.
So, let's get right to it. Was this really what they believed? That all growth, everything, was doomed to grind to a halt? Let's dig deep into this idea and find out what was really going on. But before we can understand their big prediction, we first have to get a handle on the foundation of their thinking, the classical theory. What was it exactly, and what were the main pillars it stood on? These are the architects of the theory. We're talking about the heavyweights of their time: Adam Smith, Thomas Malthus, David Ricardo, and John Stuart Mill. The ideas from all of these brilliant minds came together to create this powerful model of economic growth.
The first, and maybe the most important pillar of their theory, was the laissez-faire policy. In plain English, that just means the government should keep its hands completely off the economy. They truly believed in an invisible hand that would automatically regulate the market and produce the best results for everyone.
The second pillar was capital accumulation. According to them, the real secret to a country's progress was hoarding capital. And who could do this? Well, only the capitalists, because workers' wages were so low they had absolutely nothing left over to save.
And the third pillar, which was arguably the most crucial, was profits. You see, profit is the key that unlocks investment. The more profit you have, the more investment you get, and the faster capital gets accumulated. This was the engine that drove their entire economic model.
So these three pillars combine to create a kind of machine that generates growth. But here's the really interesting part of the theory: how that very same growth machine eventually becomes the cause of its own destruction. The classical economists were convinced that all development, all growth, had to end in what they called a stationary state, a point of complete stagnation where no further progress was possible. But why? How did they figure that? This graph right here is the blueprint for that whole process. It shows us exactly how an economy makes the journey from growth to stagnation. Let's break it down step by step and see how it works. Okay, so the journey starts here. In the beginning, profits are sky high. This encourages capitalists to invest even more money, which, in turn, increases the demand for workers. More jobs mean better pay, and with better conditions, the country's population starts to boom. But here's the catch. The seeds of the economy's downfall are sown right within this growth. To feed this booming population, you need more food, but land is finite, right? So food gets more expensive. As the cost of living goes up, workers need higher wages, and that directly eats into the capitalists' profits. Their profit margins start to shrink. And this process just keeps going until the economy hits this point on the graph, point S. Here, profits have fallen all the way down to zero. And if there's no profit, why would anyone invest? So investment stops, capital accumulation grinds to a halt, and population growth flatlines. This is what they called the stationary state, the end of capitalism. So, if the theory was so clean and logical, why didn't this actually happen in the real world? Why didn't growth stop? Let's take a look at what this theory was missing. This comparison makes it crystal clear just how different their predictions were from reality. They said wages would always be stuck at a bare minimum, but in reality, people's standard of living got way better. They predicted profits would hit zero, but that never happened. And instead of stagnating, economies just kept on growing. So what did they miss? Turns out quite a lot. They completely overlooked the rise of a brand new, savings-oriented middle class. They didn't really grasp the important role of the public sector, the government. And most importantly, they totally underestimated the incredible power of science and technology to revolutionize production and feed a growing population. So it's pretty clear their prediction was wrong, but that doesn't mean the theory was useless. Far from it. In fact, this flawed theory laid the groundwork for all of modern economics and gave us an essential framework for thinking about economic growth. Their idea that growth can't go on forever was perhaps their greatest contribution. It forced future generations to think about the limits of growth and its consequences, a question that is just as important today as it was back then. So, even though their predictions didn't pan out, their questions are still very much alive. Growth, profit, and especially the limits to growth, aren't we still grappling with these exact same issues today? It's definitely something to think about. See you in the next explainer.